A delivery worker was spotted delivering goods in a luxury Bentley, leaving people wondering, is this the result of the intense competition now, or just living the experience? Another delivery worker was seen driving a Porsche 911 while making deliveries, with people asking, could it all be really for the experience? What's going on? Recently, the owner of a cross-border e-commerce platform in Shanghai, Mr. Li, invested over 1.5 million yuan to purchase a Mercedes Maybach S480. He registered it as a luxury Didi car. This move quickly sparked widespread online discussion. It is reported that Mr. Li originally planned to use the luxury car for business receptions, but due to a business adjustment, he decided to put it into operation as a Didi rideshare vehicle. People online were questioning the business adjustment, suggesting it was just a sign of poor business performance. At this level, who would drive their personal luxury car for Didi if they could still keep it going, they said. A passenger asked a rideshare driver,
师傅，你之前是做什么工作的？
What did you do before driving for Didi? You don't look like a typical Didi driver. The driver replied, I used to be an executive at an import-export trade company. When the bonded zone lost its effectiveness and trade fell off, I lost my job. The money my company lost was just enough to buy this car, so I started driving for Didi to help cover living expenses.
This is Shanghai, one of the most bustling cities in China. Recently, people have noticed that many of the rideshare drivers on the streets are no longer driving ordinary sedans, but rather Audis, Porsches, and even Bentleys. Many of these drivers used to be executives at companies. They either faced failed startups or were hit by sudden layoffs, losing their livelihoods in an instant. Unable to find jobs in their previous fields and unwilling to accept the reality of working odd jobs, they were left with no choice but to turn to driving rideshare vehicles for a living. Shanghai, once the ceiling of China's economy, a supercity known for its strong finances and vibrant economy, has now entered a tunnel of fiscal tightening. What people are noticing first is the severe downgrade in consumption in the traditionally strong high-end market. The luxury dining and luxury goods markets have sharply contracted. Recently, several local media in Shanghai have reported that core shopping districts such as Nanjing Road, Xujiahui, and Wujiaochang, once bustling with crowds, are now facing store closures. A large number of shops are left abandoned, with vacancies lasting for months. Some branded restaurants have even switched to a self-service and delivery platform model in an effort to reduce labor costs. Even convenience stores are frequently changing operators. The Michelin restaurant at Sinan Mansion has dropped its price from 2,000 yuan to just over 300 yuan. People in the comments are calling it a great deal, yet still too expensive to afford. High-end Western dining prices are plummeting, and coffee brands are offering deep discounts. This isn't innovation, but rather a market-driven compromise due to economic struggles. Luxury brands in Shanghai are shifting to experience stores. The focus is no longer on purchasing, but on encouraging customers to experience and take photos. According to a Reuters report, Louis Vuitton's new flagship store in Shanghai integrates an exhibition space and a cafe, aiming to enhance the consumer experience. Meanwhile, many high-end stores are shutting down, while experience stores continue to open. All of this points to one issue. Under the ongoing economic slump, widespread layoffs and salary cuts sweeping across China have led to a significant decline in consumer spending. The middle class and high-income groups who are the most affected by these changes have become the driving force behind the downgrade in consumption. China's top cities are now experiencing a wave of salary cuts. In the past, China's labor market generally took on a pyramid shape. The lower levels were densely packed with blue-collar workers. The middle layers were stable with managerial roles, and the top levels had scarce talent. But with the overall economic decline in recent years and increasing structural pressures, the middle and upper layers of this pyramid are rapidly collapsing. According to several human resources platforms in the first quarter of 2025, the number of job seekers aged 40 and above has increased by more than 34% compared to the previous year. Many of these individuals come from industries such as finance, technology, real estate, and foreign trade, sectors that were once the core of enterprises but are now among the first to face layoffs. Their common traits include extensive experience, high salaries, and difficulty in transitioning. This phenomenon means that, for companies, laying off these workers is a quick way to reduce expenses, but for individuals, it represents a massive disruption to their life plans. What was once seen as the security of the middle class, real estate, cars, children's education, and healthcare, has now become a heavy burden. From Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen to the first new-tier cities, the wave of layoffs is spreading nationwide. Particularly in cities like Shanghai, the targets of layoffs are no longer limited to lower-level employees, but also include mid to senior managers, technical specialists, and senior management. This is not an isolated incident, but part of a restructuring driven by economic imbalance, aiming to trim the fat and keep the lean. Since 2025, China's entire financial system has been experiencing a sharp wage compression. From the central bank, the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, to the China Securities Regulatory Commission, wages for employees have generally been reduced by 40 to 60%. Executives at state-owned banks and investment firms now have salary caps. Performance bonuses for public servants, teachers, healthcare workers, and other public sector employees in cities like Beijing and Shanghai have significantly dropped, with some even being suspended. One of the most notable signals comes from a state-owned enterprise in Shanghai, China Railway Shanghai Engineering Group. In early June 2024, the company announced the suspension of all performance-based pay and bonuses, offering only basic salaries and allowances. While the move was officially framed as salary reform, internal employees privately admitted that it was a form of disguised layoffs. China's wage structure has long relied on a low base salary plus high performance pay plus allowances and bonuses model. This way, they maintain a facade of stability, especially in state-owned enterprises and public institutions. For frontline workers, the majority of their actual income comes from performance-based pay and additional allowances. Once these components are eliminated, the impact on employees' lives is equivalent to a direct 50% cut in their income. A former public servant from Shanghai, who now lives in the U.S., revealed that many employees at state-owned enterprises and in the public sector have low base salaries, sometimes as little as 2,000 to 3,000 yuan. But performance-based pay and allowances can raise their monthly income to 12,000 to 20,000 yuan. Once this model breaks down, it effectively amounts to disguised layoffs. This not only creates significant psychological pressure on employees, but also highlights the financial strain, task reductions, and investment slowdowns faced by state-owned sectors. In the past, China Railway relied on the high-speed rail industry chain and infrastructure expansion for its business model. Now, this approach is no longer sustainable, and downsizing and cutting benefits have become inevitable choices under pressure. The situation is equally bleak in the public sector. Reports suggest that some public servants in Shanghai are also facing the risk of a 50% salary cut. It is worth noting that Shanghai was once the only city in China still holding a fiscal surplus. The fact that even this model city is now facing financial difficulties underscores the near-critical level of overall fiscal pressure in China. The collapse of the real estate market has directly led to severe fiscal strain in Shanghai. Many people in mainland China believe that Shanghai's finances won't face problems, given that it is the wealthiest city in the country. In 2024, it remained the only region in the nation capable of contributing fiscal surpluses to the central government. But this year's data is beginning to challenge that perception. According to official figures, from January to April 2025, Shanghai's general public budget revenue was approximately 351.3 billion yuan, only a 0.6% increase from the previous year. In contrast, fiscal expenditure during the same period reached 318.6 billion yuan, a 13.6% increase. This means that while revenue has barely grown, spending has surged. If this trend continues, Shanghai could become one of the cities facing a fiscal deficit by the end of the year. According to the Shanghai Municipal Statistics Bureau's 2024 report, the city's total retail sales of consumer goods grew by only 1.8% year-on-year, far below the national average. The shift in consumer spending towards cost-effectiveness and cutting non-essential expenses reflects the public's anxiety about future income prospects. The primary reason behind Shanghai's sharp fiscal contraction is the significant reduction in land sales revenue, which has been the city's largest source of income. Nationwide, property companies like Country Garden saw a 35% year-on-year decline in sales in the first 5 months of the year. In the first quarter, new construction areas dropped by 24%, real estate development investment fell by 10%, and property company sales were halved. The tsunami of the real estate collapse has reached Shanghai, and even this most economically powerful city in China cannot escape its impact. A real estate agent in Shanghai said,
上海的房价真的快成一个笑话。
Shanghai housing prices are really becoming a joke. If they keep falling like this, many people's financial situations will be in trouble. Just think about it. 5 years ago, a 4 million yuan house is now worth only 2.4 million, but the mortgage still stands at 3 million. Selling the house won't even cover the debt, and you'll need to add 600,000 yuan from your own pocket. Who can bear that? If the market continues to decline, it's very likely that a number of people will be forced to stop paying their mortgages. Home buyers will face huge losses, but the banks definitely won't lose out. Some predict that Shanghai's housing prices will keep falling for another 2 or 3 years. Folks, Can we ordinary people really withstand such a drop? If prices keep dropping for a few more years, how many families will end up in a financial crisis because of this?
People have expressed disagreement with this view, stating that the market will decline for at least another 5 years, not just 2 or 3. Housing prices can't recover just by wishful thinking. Industry insiders noted that the real estate market is in a slump, with developers hesitant to acquire land and frequent land auctions failing. This has caused local governments to lose one of their most important non-tax revenue sources. According to statistics, Shanghai's non-tax revenue growth in 2024 was just 4.5%, far below the national average of 37%. While this suggests that Shanghai is not yet relying on fines-based economics like other regions, it also reveals the potential risk of expanded law enforcement in the future. Observers have pointed out that Shanghai, the most internationalized city in China and the economic leader of the country, has always strived to maintain a polished public image as the face of the Yangtze River Delta. Since its finances have not yet been depleted or bankrupt, Shanghai has been relatively restrained in practices such as fines-based economics and entrapment law enforcement, unlike other local governments whose finances and credit have already collapsed and are openly resorting to unscrupulous tactics. Once a fiscal deficit emerges and the CCP is unable to support it, Shanghai's massive administrative and bureaucratic system will inevitably turn its attention to private enterprises and ordinary citizens to sustain its operations. China's economy has fallen into a downward spiral, marked by overcapacity, and is now considered one of the most distorted economic systems. Analysts believe that China's middle class has largely fallen back into poverty, and high-income groups have also started to significantly downgrade their consumption. This marks a shift from the normal cyclical fluctuations of China's economy into a dangerous downward spiral. When the wealthy in a city begin to use their family cars for ride-sharing services like Didi, while canceling gym memberships and cutting back on travel plans, it is the service sector that first feels the chill. The service industry is the largest reservoir of employment in cities. This creates a vicious cycle. Reduced consumption leads to business contraction, which leads to increased layoffs, declining confidence, and then further reduced consumption. The absurdity is that China has long touted itself as a consumer upgrade economy, yet in reality it is suffering from a quadruple crisis of weak consumption, deteriorating enjoyment, fiscal decline, and financial risks. When infrastructure investment is no longer sustainable, the real estate bubble bursts, and exports face the pressure of tariff wars and foreign capital outflows. All the illusions of stable growth begin to collapse. Amid this structural crisis, external observers have been particularly critical. After a meeting, the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury bluntly stated, "They are the most imbalanced economy in the history of the world." This statement is neither a mockery nor propaganda, but a precise summary of the economic logic that has driven China's development for decades. The U.S. side argues that China's manufacturing capacity accounts for 35% of the global total, while its GDP represents about 10% of the world's economy, but its contribution of consumption to GDP is only 3.7%. This imbalance, they say, should not continue to expand. China's growth model relies excessively on exports and overcapacity, making it a typical supply-driven economy rather than a demand-driven one. The U.S. further warned that China is trying to shift internal pressures through massive export capacity. This strategy not only triggers global trade tensions, but also hampers fair competition in global supply chains. They called for the International Monetary Fund and G7 members to intervene jointly to prevent China's manufacturing sector from further monopolizing the market and disrupting the balance of the global economy. China's demographic dividend has disappeared, and its expansionary economy is now hindered. Analysts believe that despite severe overcapacity, the ongoing U.S.-China trade dispute and significant tariff increases will make China's foreign trade exports increasingly difficult. Additionally, China's other major driving force, the demographic dividend, has been largely depleted. As a result, China's economic outlook is trapped in a downward spiral, with dire consequences. Shanghai's non-local population has fallen below 10 million, with weak demand for labor and a decline in both population and workforce. The sparse passenger flow at Pudong International Airport has become a symbol of Shanghai's shrinking population. The significant population decrease has led to rising labor costs, further dealing a heavy blow to China's expansionary economic model. Data shows that China's exports to the U.S. plummeted by 35% in May, marking the largest drop in over 5 years since February 2020. Overall export growth slowed from 8.1 to 4.8%, while imports decreased by 3.4%. The trend of businesses shifting orders abroad is becoming more evident, with foreign-invested factories relocating to countries like Vietnam and India, putting pressure on China's export capacity. The Chinese government has set a GDP growth target of 5%, but international organizations have widely downgraded their growth expectations for China. The IMF lowered its forecast from 5 to 4.5%, while Moody's revised it down to between 3.8 and 4.1%, reflecting the cumulative effects of global risks. Institutions like the IMF have warned of China's high fiscal deficit. The official 2025 fiscal deficit target announced by the Chinese government is set at 4%. It is a 1 percentage point increase from the previous year, with the deficit size reaching 5.7 trillion yuan, a historic high. When including hidden debts, the actual figure could reach 8 to 9%. The data released by the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics on June 27th revealed that in May, profits from industrial enterprises above a designated size dropped by 9.1% year-on-year. This not only reversed the 3% year-on-year profit growth seen in April, but also turned the nationwide industrial profit growth trend from a 1.4% year-on-year increase for the first 4 months of the year into a 1.1% year-on-year decline. In response to the shocking data shift, Wei Ning, a statistician from the National Bureau of Statistics, explained that the profit decline was due to insufficient effective demand, falling industrial product prices, and short-term fluctuations. This explanation is highly problematic. Insufficient effective demand and falling industrial product prices have been long-standing issues, not just problems limited to May. Given the same macroeconomic context, why did industrial profits grow in April and from January to April but then take a downturn in May? Clearly, the issue lies in Wei Ning's mention of short-term factors. What are the short-term factors? In simple terms, they mainly refer to the severe impact of Trump's Tariff War 2.0 on China's industrial enterprises. The CCP government has repeatedly claimed that unlike other economies that dare not face Trump's tariffs, China was challenging them. The CCP claimed that China stood firm and won against Trump's Tariff War 2.0. This narrative is misleading and unsubstantiated. Facing the economic data they themselves released, the authorities dare not tell the truth. Instead, they play with words, inventing the excuse of short-term factors while avoiding any mention of the real impact of Trump's tariff war. In fact, China's industrial sector has been on a downward spiral for some time, and the blow from the tariff war merely exposed its deteriorating state. According to official data from the Chinese government, from January to May, profits from industrial enterprises above a designated size declined by 1.1% year-on-year, while operating revenue during the same period grew by 2.7% year-on-year. 1. Industrial enterprises above a designated size achieved operating revenue of 54.8 trillion yuan, a 2.7% increase year-on-year. This indicates that industrial enterprises are experiencing a decline in efficiency, with increased revenue not translating into higher profits. This is because the growth rate of operating costs, which is 3% from January to May, is faster than that of revenue. In other words, they're losing money while making noise. Operating revenue profit margin dropped by 0.2 percentage points year-on-year, marking the lowest level since 2012. 2. Why did operating revenue increase by 2.7% year-on-year? The main reason is asset scale expansion. By the end of May, the total assets of industrial enterprises above a designated size amounted to 182.4 trillion yuan, a 5.1% increase year-on-year. This growth rate is almost twice as fast as the operating revenue growth rate, indicating that the benefits of asset scale expansion are very low. 3. The asset scale expansion of industrial enterprises above a designated size is largely driven by borrowing. By the end of May, total liabilities amounted to 105 trillion yuan, a 5.3% increase, while total equity stood at 77 trillion yuan, up by 4.8%. With economic performance declining, they are still increasing the asset-liability ratio, which inevitably raises the risk. It seems that industrial enterprises are becoming bolder. 4. In reality, it's not that industrial enterprises have become bolder, but rather that the CCP's forced support for the manufacturing sector is to blame. Domestic demand in China is insufficient, and manufacturing capacity is excessive, yet the CCP continues to heavily invest in the manufacturing industry. The investment primarily comes from bank loans. Despite the fact that profits in China's manufacturing sector have been declining for over 3 years, the sector is accumulating more and more bank loans. How will they repay the principal and interest? Under the CCP's policies, the manufacturing sector's struggles have dragged the banks into a mess, essentially brewing a systemic financial risk. These issues have not emerged overnight. In summary, the data from the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics exposes 2 key problems. 1. With the exception of a few individual years, the revenue growth rate of industrial enterprises above a designated size has consistently outpaced the total profit growth rate. 2. As a result, the overall operating revenue profit margin has been declining, indicating that the efficiency of China's industrial enterprises is quite low. From an economic perspective, the CCP's manufacturing policy is flawed and has significantly worsened China's economic predicament. The key issue is that the CCP is fully aware of these problems, so why does it continue with this approach? In short, the CCP is determined to turn the manufacturing sector into a giant, making the entire world dependent on China. But Trump's tariff war shattered the CCP's dream. In May, China's industrial profits plummeted, exposing the problems within the manufacturing sector, and even manipulated data can no longer cover up the CCP's failures. Recently, rumors have been circulating online that Shanghai public servants may face a 50% salary cut. While this has not yet been confirmed, such rumors would have been unimaginable in the past. As China's most economically prosperous city, the mere existence of such rumors signals the gravest of crises. Civil servants within the system are the last group the CCP can rely on. And if the CCP can't even protect its own bureaucratic personnel, its plans for manufacturing and military expansion will become a laughingstock. In this context, luxury cars being used for Didi ride-sharing doesn't prove that Shanghai's economy is strong. Instead, they're a reflection of the disconnection between the times. Behind this phenomenon are shrinking incomes, employment difficulties, lost orders, and multiple overlapping crises. Shanghai is not only a microcosm of China's economy, but also the CCP's carefully crafted showcase. If Shanghai cannot withstand the pressure, what will support China's economy in the future?